crystal chandeliers of the Meridian Hotel's grand ballroom cast dancing shadows across tables draped in ivory silk. Chicago's elite mingled over champagne flutes, their laughter mixing with the soft jazz quartet in the corner. The annual Healthcare Innovation Gala was the city's most exclusive networking event, where million-dollar deals were sealed with handshakes and careers were made or destroyed over dessert. Maya Chen adjusted her pearl necklace and smoothed her midnight blue evening gown as she approached. Table 7. At 28, she commanded attention not through flashy displays of wealth, but through quiet confidence that spoke volumes. Her designer clutch contained business cards that could change lives, but tonight she preferred to observe rather than announce her presence. "Excuse me, Miss," a nasal voice cut through the ambient chatter. Maya looked up to see a thin waiter with slicked-back hair and a permanent sneer etched into his angular features. His name tag read Derek, and his eyes held the particular brand of disdain reserved for those he deemed beneath his station. "I'm sorry, but this section is reserved for VIP guests only," Derek continued, his voice dripping with barely concealed contempt. "The general admission tables are over there." He gestured dismissively toward the back corner of the ballroom, near the kitchen doors where the lighting was dimmer and the conversations quieter. Maya's eyebrows raised slightly. She glanced at the gold-embossed place card clearly marked with her name at the seat she'd been approaching. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding. This is my assigned seat." Derek's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Ma'am, I don't think you understand how these events work. The people at this table, they own hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, medical device manufacturers. They don't just attend charity galas. They fund them." His eyes swept over Maya's elegant but not ostentatious appearance with practiced disdain. "Perhaps you won a raffle ticket or something? Community outreach programs sometimes—" "I have my invitation right here," Maya interrupted calmly, reaching into her clutch. The sounds of the gala continued around them, but she noticed several nearby guests had turned to watch the exchange. Phones were discreetly positioned, cameras ready. Derek didn't even glance at the invitation Maya extended. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. "Look, I'm trying to save you from embarrassment here. When Dr. Harrison and the pharmaceutical executives arrive, they're not going to want to— well, you understand. These people have expectations about who they network with." The jazz quartet finished their song, creating a pocket of silence that amplified Derek's next words. "I'm sure you're very nice, but this just isn't your crowd. The Community Service Awards tables are more appropriate." A woman at table 6 gasped audibly. An elderly man in a tuxedo shook his head disapprovingly, though whether at Derek or Maya was unclear. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, is this really happening?" Maya's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around her clutch, but her voice remained steady. "I've been personally invited to sit at this table. My name is on the place card, and my invitation is valid." Derek's patience evaporated. "Ma'am, I don't have time for this. Either you move to an appropriate table, or I'll have security escort you out. We have actual donors and sponsors arriving soon, and I won't have them uncomfortable because someone thinks they can crash an exclusive event." The surrounding conversations had completely stopped. Maya could see at least 6 phones now openly recording the interaction. A local news reporter she recognized from Channel 7 had positioned herself for a better view, her cameraman already rolling. "Are you suggesting I don't belong here because of how I look?" Maya asked, her tone remaining professional despite the obvious slight. Derek scoffed. "I'm suggesting you don't belong here because people who belong here don't need to ask that question. They don't need to explain themselves or wave invitations around like tickets to a movie theater." He straightened his bow tie with smug satisfaction. "Real VIPs understand their place in the ecosystem." Maya felt the weight of dozens of stares. Some faces showed sympathy, others curiosity, and a few displayed the uncomfortable satisfaction of watching someone else be humiliated. She recognized the moment for what it was, a crossroads where she could either retreat quietly or stand her ground. "I understand perfectly where I stand," Maya said, her voice carrying a new edge that made Derek pause for just a moment. But he was too committed to his performance now, especially with the growing audience. "Great! Then you'll understand when I bring the soup course to the VIP tables, and you watch from over there." He gestured again toward the back tables with a flourish. Maya took a slow breath, her mind calculating not just her next move, but the implications of this moment. In her clutch, her phone had been buzzing with notifications. Her assistant, her board members, colleagues who'd seen the live streams already spreading across social media. She looked directly into Derek's eyes and asked with perfect composure, "Are you absolutely certain you want to continue down this path?" Derek's smirk widened. "Lady, I've been working high-end events for 8 years. I know exactly who belongs where. And right now, you're exactly where you don't belong." The words hung in the air like a challenge, witnessed by Chicago's most powerful people and broadcast live to thousands online. Maya's next move would determine not just her evening, but potentially the careers and reputations of everyone involved. "Do you?" she asked quietly, her tone suggesting depths Derek hadn't yet fathomed. Derek's confidence swelled with the attention. He'd handled difficult guests before, and in his experience, most people backed down when faced with public embarrassment and the threat of security. This woman, despite her poise, would be no different. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step away from this table now," he announced loudly, ensuring his authority was witnessed by the surrounding guests. "We have protocols to follow, and you're disrupting the experience for our legitimate VIP guests." Maya remained perfectly still, her hands folded calmly in front of her. "What protocols specifically require you to move someone with a valid invitation and assigned seating?" The question caught Derek off guard, but only momentarily. "Look, I don't need to explain event management to you. What I need is for you to stop making a scene and move along." "I'm making a scene?" Maya's voice remained level, but there was something in her tone that made several nearby guests lean forward. "I'm standing next to my assigned seat with my invitation. You're the one who's created this situation." A distinguished man at table 8 pulled out his phone and began typing rapidly. The woman who had gasped earlier now had her phone recording openly, no longer pretending discretion. The jazz quartet had stopped playing entirely, sensing the shift in the room's energy. Derek felt the pressure of the watching crowd, but interpreted their attention as validation of his authority. "Ma'am, for the last time, Derek, isn't it?" Maya interrupted, reading his name tag aloud. The simple act of saying his name seemed to unsettle him. "How long have you worked for Meridian Catering Services?" The specificity of her question, knowing not just that he was catering staff, but which company employed him, created a ripple of murmurs through the crowd. Derek's eyes narrowed. That's not relevant. What's relevant is that you need to— 8 years, you said?" Maya continued. "That's a significant tenure. I imagine you've built relationships with the hotel management, maybe even some regular clients who request you specifically for their events." Derek's confidence flickered. Something about the way she was speaking, the calm authority in her voice, was beginning to feel familiar in a way that made him uncomfortable. But he was too far into the confrontation to back down now, especially with so many witnesses. "Look, lady, I don't know what game you're playing, but—" "No games," Maya said simply. "I'm just trying to understand the reasoning behind your decision to publicly humiliate someone who's done nothing wrong." The word "publicly" seemed to awaken Derek to the full scope of the situation. He glanced around, noticing for the first time just how many phones were recording, how many faces were turned toward them. But instead of retreating, he doubled down. "Humiliate? I'm trying to prevent your humiliation. Do you see these people? He gestured broadly at the surrounding tables. Dr. Patricia Harrison owns 4 hospitals. The man behind you just donated $2 million to medical research. The woman in the red dress runs the largest pharmaceutical distribution network in the Midwest. His voice grew more animated. These aren't people who network with, well, with whoever you are. A collective intake of breath swept through the nearby tables. Several guests looked genuinely shocked at Derek's bluntness. The Channel 7 reporter stepped closer, her cameraman adjusting his angle. Maya absorbed the slight with remarkable composure. And you've determined I don't belong in their company because if you belonged here, you wouldn't be arguing with the catering staff about where to sit. Derek snapped, his professional facade cracking. You'd be talking to the people who actually matter, not standing here waving invitations like some kind of party crasher. The crude assessment hung in the air. Maya noticed the shift in the crowd. The initial curiosity was transforming into something else. Discomfort. Recognition that they were witnessing something ugly. I see, Maya said quietly. So, in your professional opinion, people who belong at events like this don't need to prove their legitimacy when challenged by staff? Derek sensed he was being led somewhere, but his pride wouldn't let him retreat. That's exactly right. Real VIPs don't get questioned in the first place, because it's obvious who they are. Interesting perspective, Maya mused. She glanced at her watch, a simple but elegant Cartier that Derek, focused on her perceived inadequacy, hadn't noticed. Derek, would you mind bringing me a bowl of the butternut squash soup? I believe it's the first course being served to the VIP tables. The request was so unexpected, so calmly delivered after the heated exchange, that Derek blinked in confusion. What? The soup. The VIP course you mentioned. I'd like to try it. Derek's confusion transformed into irritation. Ma'am, that soup is for VIP guests only. I already explained. Humor me, Maya interrupted. Bring me a bowl. I'll take full responsibility if there are any consequences. The crowd watched this strange exchange with growing fascination. Derek looked around, seeing dozens of expectant faces. Phones still recording, the news crew capturing every word. This is ridiculous, he muttered. But something about Maya's calm certainty was beginning to eat at his confidence. Still, he couldn't back down now. Not in front of all these people. Not when his authority had been so publicly challenged. Fine, he said with exaggerated exasperation. But when security comes to escort you out for disrupting the event, don't say I didn't warn you. He stalked toward the kitchen, leaving Maya standing calmly by table 7. The surrounding guests whispered among themselves, phones buzzing with social media updates. The hashtag Meridian Gala was already trending locally. Maya checked her phone discreetly. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and her Twitter notifications were overwhelming. Her assistant had sent an urgent message. Maya, the live streams are everywhere. Should I contact the hotel? She typed back quickly. Not yet. Let it play out. Dr. Patricia Harrison, a silver-haired woman Maya recognized from medical journals, approached from table 5. Excuse me, dear. I'm sorry about this display. Derek can be rather overzealous about protocol. Maya smiled genuinely for the first time that evening. Thank you, Dr. Harrison. I appreciate your concern. Have we met before? You seem familiar. Before Maya could answer, Derek returned from the kitchen, carrying a bowl of soup with obvious reluctance. His jaw was set, his movements sharp with barely controlled anger. Here, he said, placing the bowl down with just enough force to cause a small splash. Your VIP soup. I hope it's worth the embarrassment you're about to face. Maya looked down at the bowl, then up at Derek, then at the crowd of Chicago's most powerful people, watching this surreal confrontation unfold. Thank you, she said simply. Derek's triumphant smirk suggested he believed he'd won some kind of victory. He had no idea that in approximately 3 minutes, his entire world was about to change forever. As Maya lifted the spoon to her lips, her mind flashed to a memory from 15 years earlier. A 12-year-old girl standing in the cafeteria of Lincoln Middle School, her free lunch tray balanced in small hands while classmates whispered about the charity case in their midst. That girl had learned early that dignity wasn't given. It was claimed, maintained, and defended. Maya Chen had built her life around that lesson. The daughter of immigrants who'd arrived in Chicago with medical degrees that weren't recognized in America, Maya had watched her father drive taxis while studying for his medical licensing exams at night, her mother clean office buildings while taking English classes on weekends. They'd sacrificed everything so their daughter could have opportunities they'd been denied. By 14, Maya was tutoring high school students in calculus. By 18, she'd earned a full scholarship to Northwestern. By 25, she'd completed her MBA and was working at McKinsey, consulting for the same healthcare systems that had once overlooked her parents' qualifications. But Maya's real breakthrough had come through quiet observation and strategic patience. While her colleagues fought for visibility in client meetings, she'd focused on understanding the problems no one else was solving. Healthcare accessibility, medical equity, the gap between innovation and implementation in underserved communities. 3 years ago, she'd left McKinsey to found Chen Healthcare Solutions, a consulting firm that specialized in helping medical organizations improve both their profitability and their community impact. Her approach was revolutionary in its simplicity. Better patient outcomes led to better business outcomes. And sustainable healthcare required serving everyone, not just the affluent. Her client list now included 7 of Chicago's largest hospital systems, 3 pharmaceutical companies, and medical device manufacturers across the Midwest. Her firm had generated over $40 million in cost savings for clients while expanding care to underserved populations by 30%. 6 months ago, Maya had received a call that changed everything. The Meridian Foundation, Chicago's most prestigious healthcare philanthropy, had invited her company to submit a proposal for their largest initiative ever, a $50 million program to revolutionize healthcare delivery in urban communities. Maya had spent months crafting the proposal, knowing it represented more than just a contract. Success would establish her firm as a major player in healthcare transformation. Failure would likely mean watching larger, more established firms continue to dominate while communities that looked like her childhood neighborhood remained underserved. The proposal had been accepted 2 weeks ago. Tonight's gala wasn't just a networking event for Maya, it was the official announcement of the Meridian Foundation's new partnership with Chen Healthcare Solutions. She was scheduled to give a brief address during the awards ceremony, introducing herself to Chicago's healthcare elite as their newest strategic partner. The irony wasn't lost on her that Derek's assumptions about who belonged at VIP tables reflected the exact prejudices her work was designed to combat. In healthcare, as in so many industries, people made assumptions about competence, authority, and value based on appearances. Patients were dismissed, professionals were overlooked, and innovations were ignored because they didn't fit preconceived notions of what success looked like. Maya had learned to navigate these biases with strategic patience, proving her worth through results rather than confrontation. But tonight felt different. The blatant disrespect, the public humiliation, the assumption that she was somehow less worthy of basic courtesy, it triggered something deeper than professional frustration. This wasn't just about her anymore. The live streams spreading across social media meant thousands of people were watching a young woman of color be dismissed and degraded at Chicago's most exclusive healthcare event. Young girls who looked like Maya would see this interaction and internalize messages about their own worth and belonging. The stakes had evolved beyond a contract or even her company's reputation. This moment was becoming a symbol, whether she'd chosen it or not, as she tasted the butternut squash soup, which was, admittedly, quite good, Maya considered her options. She could quietly reveal her identity, accept Derek's inevitable apology, and move forward with minimal disruption, the safe choice that protected everyone's comfort and maintained the status quo. Or she could let this moment teach the lesson it seemed determined to teach. Maya set down her spoon and looked at Derek, who was watching her with barely concealed satisfaction, clearly expecting her to be intimidated by the soup's presumed exclusivity. "It's delicious," she said calmly. "Though I have to say, it's not quite as good as the version they served at the Northwestern Medical Center's board dinner last month." Derek blinked. Northwestern Medical was one of Chicago's most prestigious hospital systems. Maya's casual reference to their board dinner was delivered so matter-of-factly that several nearby guests paused their conversations to listen. "I'm sure you wouldn't know about that event, though," Maya continued with a slight smile. "It was quite exclusive." For the first time since the confrontation began, Derek looked genuinely uncertain. Derek's eyes narrowed as he processed Maya's casual mention of Northwestern Medical's board dinner. The confidence that had carried him through the confrontation began to waver, but pride and the weight of his watching audience kept him anchored to his position. "Anyone can claim they went to some dinner," he said, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "It doesn't change the fact that you're sitting at the wrong table." Maya nodded thoughtfully, as if considering his perspective. "You're absolutely right. Claims are meaningless without proof." She reached into her designer clutch and withdrew her phone. "Derek, you seem very knowledgeable about how VIP events work. Tell me, what do you know about corporate sponsorship structures for medical galas?" The question seemed to come from nowhere, and Derek found himself off balance. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Humor me," Maya said, echoing her earlier request for soup. "In your 8 years of high-end catering, you must have observed how these events are funded. The different tiers of sponsors, their various privileges and recognitions." Dr. Harrison, who had remained nearby during the exchange, stepped closer with obvious curiosity. Several other guests had now abandoned any pretense of their own conversations, drawn by the increasingly surreal confrontation. Derek glanced around nervously. "Look, I serve food and manage seating arrangements. I don't get involved in the business side." "Of course not," Maya agreed smoothly. "But you understand the hierarchy, don't you? The presenting sponsors, the platinum-level supporters, the organizations that don't just attend these events, but make them possible?" Something in Maya's tone was beginning to alarm Derek, though he couldn't articulate why. "I suppose, but the Meridian Foundation's gala has several sponsor levels," Maya continued, her voice taking on the cadence of someone comfortable with boardroom presentations. "Bronze sponsors get table recognition. Silver sponsors get program acknowledgement. Gold sponsors get speaking opportunities." She paused, letting the words settle over the increasingly attentive crowd. "And then there's the Platinum Partnership tier," Maya said quietly, "reserved for the Foundation's most strategic collaborators. The organizations that don't just fund events, but reshape how healthcare is delivered in our community." Derek's throat felt dry. "Why are you telling me this?" Maya smiled, and for the first time that evening it wasn't entirely pleasant. "Because Platinum Partners get several exclusive privileges. Priority seating at VIP tables, recognition during the awards ceremony, and, most relevantly," she paused, looking directly into Derek's eyes, "their representatives are personally escorted to their seats by the hotel's general manager, not questioned by catering staff." The implication hit Derek like a physical blow, but he was too committed to retreat now. "You're not... You can't be suggesting..." "I'm not suggesting anything," Maya said calmly. "I'm simply sharing information about how these events work, since you expressed such confidence in your understanding of protocols." Dr. Harrison's eyes widened with sudden recognition. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You're Maya Chen." The name rippled through the nearby tables like an electric current. Phones came up, cameras refocused, and the whispered conversations took on a completely different tone. Derek felt the shift in the crowd's energy without understanding its source. "Who is Maya Chen?" he demanded, looking around desperately for context. Maya looked at him with something approaching pity. "Derek, what's the name of tonight's featured platinum partnership announcement?" Derek's mouth moved without sound. He realized with growing horror that he had no idea what corporate partnership was being announced tonight. In his 8 years of catering high-end events, he'd never bothered to learn about the actual business being conducted around him. The Meridian Foundation's new partnership with Chen Healthcare Solutions, Dr. Harrison provided, her voice carrying a mixture of awe and second-hand embarrassment. $50 million for urban healthcare transformation, the biggest initiative in the Foundation's history. Derek's face went ashen. The surrounding guests watched his realization dawn with the fascination of witnessing a slow-motion disaster. That's not," Derek stammered, looking between Maya and Dr. Harrison. "You can't be. You look so young," Maya suggested helpfully. "That's what happens when you start companies in your 20s and build them through competence rather than connections." The Channel 7 reporter had moved close enough to capture every word. The live stream comments were exploding across social media platforms. Meridian Gala was now trending nationally, with thousands sharing clips of the confrontation. Derek's mind raced through the implications. If this woman was really Maya Chen, if she really represented the gala's most important corporate partner, then he hadn't just been rude to a guest. He'd publicly humiliated the person whose company was funding the evening's main event. I didn't." Derek's professional composure crumbled completely. "No one told me you were coming. There was no protocol briefing about VIP recognition for people who look like me?" Maya finished quietly. The question hung in the air with devastating precision. Derek's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. Around them, Chicago's healthcare elite watched him struggle with the consequences of assumptions he'd never questioned. Maya turned to address Dr. Harrison and the growing crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption to your evening. I know you're here to celebrate medical innovation and community service, not to witness, well, whatever this has been." Her gracious acknowledgement of the situation only made Derek's behavior look worse by comparison. Several guests nodded approvingly at her composure. "However," Maya continued, her voice carrying a new edge, "this interaction has highlighted something important that I think deserves discussion. The assumptions we make about who belongs in spaces of power and influence. The snap judgments about competence and credibility based on appearances." Derek felt the weight of dozens of stares, the silent condemnation of people whose respect he'd spent years cultivating. "Derek," Maya said, turning back to him with calm authority, "you asked earlier if I knew who I was talking to. Let me return that question. Do you understand who you've been talking to for the past 15 minutes? Derek's voice came out as barely a whisper. "You're Maya Chen. Your company is the Platinum Partner." "That's correct." "And Derek?" Maya paused, letting the tension build. "My company didn't just partner with the Meridian Foundation. We also have contracts with the Meridian Hotel Group for consulting services on their hospitality diversity and inclusion initiatives." The final piece of information hit Derek like a sledgehammer. Not only had he humiliated the gala's most important corporate sponsor, but he'd done it while representing a hotel chain that was paying her company for advice on exactly this type of situation. Maya watched Derek's face cycle through shock, fear, and dawning comprehension of just how completely he'd destroyed his evening, his reputation, and quite possibly his career. "Derek," she said quietly, "do you still think I'm sitting at the wrong table?" Derek stood frozen, his face cycling through shades of pale as the full magnitude of his situation crystallized. Around them, the ballroom had transformed into an amphitheater of digital documentation. Dozens of phones captured every moment, Live streams multiplied across platforms, and the hashtag #UrarkSoupGate was beginning to trend alongside On Feed the Meridian Gala. Maya's phone buzzed incessantly in her clutch. Her assistant's latest message read, CNN picked up the story. Fox News calling. Your interview requests are at 47 and climbing. I made a mistake, Derek whispered, his earlier arrogance evaporating completely. I didn't know who you were. Maya's expression remained neutral, but her words cut deep. Derek, that's exactly the problem. You didn't need to know who I was. You needed to treat every guest with basic respect and professionalism. Dr. Harrison stepped forward, her medical authority lending weight to her words. Young man, I've attended this gala for 12 years. I've never witnessed such unprofessional behavior, and certainly never seen someone so blatantly— She paused, searching for diplomatic language. Racist, suggested a voice from table 8. The word hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore or dispel. Derek's eyes darted around desperately. No, it wasn't about— I was just following protocols. What protocols? Maya asked calmly. Show me the written policy that instructed you to remove validly invited guests based on your personal assessment of whether they look like they belong. The Channel 7 reporter stepped closer, her cameraman capturing Derek's stammering response. There's not a written policy exactly, but we're trained to recognize when someone might be confused about their seating assignment. Confused? Maya repeated slowly, letting the word resonate. And what indicators led you to believe I was confused, Derek? The question was a masterclass in strategic communication. Maya wasn't accusing Derek of racism directly. She was letting his own words reveal his bias to the watching crowd. Derek realized he was trapped in a logic puzzle with no escape. Every answer would either admit to racial profiling or reveal the hollowness of his justifications. You seemed uncertain about where you belonged. I walked directly to my assigned seat with my invitation, Maya countered. At what point did I seem uncertain? Social media exploded with real-time commentary. Twitter users dissected Derek's responses, TikTok creators posted reaction videos, and LinkedIn discussions about workplace discrimination gained thousands of comments per minute. James Morrison, the Meridian Hotel's general manager, materialized at Maya's elbow as if conjured by crisis management instincts. His face was flushed, his usual calm professionalism cracking under the pressure of witnessing his employee destroy the hotel's reputation in real time. Ms. Chen, Morrison said breathlessly, I am so profoundly sorry. This is absolutely unacceptable behavior that in no way represents our hotel's values or training standards. Derek's head whipped toward his boss. Mr. Morrison, I was just— Derek, step away from this table immediately, Morrison commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to crisis management. Report to my office. Do not speak to any guests, staff, or media on your way. But Derek, perhaps recognizing that his career was already over, seemed determined to dig his grave deeper. Sir, with all due respect, I was protecting the integrity of the event. When people try to crash exclusive functions— Derek. Morrison's voice cut through the ballroom chatter like a whip crack. You are addressing one of Chicago's most respected healthcare executives, a woman whose company is providing consulting services to our hotel group, and tonight's featured speaker. Your behavior is not just unprofessional. It's destroying our reputation in real time. The surrounding guests absorbed this confirmation with visible shock. Maya Chen wasn't just a successful consultant. She was tonight's keynote speaker, the person scheduled to address them all about healthcare innovation and community service. Derek's face went from pale to green. Tonight's speaker? But the speaker is supposed to be a young woman of color who built a multi-million-dollar company from scratch. Maya finished quietly, I'm sorry if that doesn't match your mental image of what success looks like. The crowd's energy shifted palpably. What had begun as uncomfortable entertainment was transforming into something deeper, a recognition that they were witnessing a moment of reckoning about assumptions and prejudices that extended far beyond. One ignorant waiter, Dr. Sarah Kim from Northwestern Memorial, stepped forward. Ms. Chen, your work with our emergency department protocols has been revolutionary. I had no idea you were so young. Neither did Derek, Maya replied with dry humor. Though age, like appearance, shouldn't determine how we treat people with dignity and respect. Morrison attempted damage control. Ms. Chen, please know that Derek's behavior will be addressed immediately and comprehensively. We have zero tolerance for discrimination of any kind. I appreciate that, Mr. Morrison, but I'm less concerned about Derek's individual actions than I am about the systems that made this possible. Maya's voice carried the measured tone of someone comfortable, addressing boardrooms and conference halls. How many other guests have been subjected to similar treatment without the benefit of live streams and social media attention? The question landed like a stone in still water, creating ripples of uncomfortable recognition throughout the ballroom. Derek, sensing his last chance at redemption slipping away, made one final desperate attempt at justification. I still don't understand why this is such a big deal. People make mistakes about seating arrangements all the time. If she had just explained who she was from the beginning, if I had just what? Maya's composure cracked slightly, revealing a flash of the anger she'd been controlling. If I had just accepted your assumption that I didn't belong here and meekly complied with your demand to move, if I had just smiled and shuffled to the back tables like a good girl who knows her place, the ballroom fell silent. Maya's words carried the weight of every professional woman of color who'd been forced to prove her credibility, every expert who'd been dismissed based on appearance, every qualified person who'd been told they didn't look the part. Derek opened his mouth to respond, but Morrison cut him off with a sharp gesture. Derek, you're terminated. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. But Maya held up a hand. Wait, Morrison paused, confusion flickering across his face. Maya looked directly at Derek, her expression unreadable. Derek, you said you've been working high-end events for 8 years. In all that time, have you ever questioned the seating arrangement of a white guest? Derek's silence was answer enough. Have you ever asked to see a white person's invitation? Ever suggested they might be confused about their table assignment? Ever implied they didn't understand how these events work? Each question landed with surgical precision, exposing the pattern of bias that Derek had never been forced to confront. Ms. Chen, Morrison interjected, I assure you that Derek's employment is terminated. I'm not finished, Maya said quietly, her authority absolute despite her calm tone. The entire ballroom waited for her next words, knowing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Not just the downfall of one prejudiced employee, but a moment of truth that would ripple far beyond the Meridian Hotel's elegant walls. Maya walked slowly to the center of the space between the tables, her movement commanding attention without demanding it. The jazz quartet had long since stopped playing. The catering staff stood frozen in uncertainty, and Chicago's most powerful healthcare leaders watched with rapt attention as she prepared to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, Maya began, her voice carrying easily through the acoustically perfect ballroom. I know this evening hasn't unfolded as any of us expected. When I accepted the Meridian Foundation's invitation to speak tonight, I anticipated discussing healthcare innovation, community partnerships, and our shared commitment to serving all patients with excellence. She paused, letting her eyes sweep across the crowd, taking in the faces of colleagues, competitors, and strangers who had witnessed her public humiliation and now waited to see how she would respond. Instead, we've all participated in a different kind of education, a real-time demonstration of the biases and assumptions that plague not just the hospitality industry, but healthcare itself. Dr. Harrison nodded approvingly, while several other guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Derek asked me to prove who I was, to justify my presence at this table, to explain why I belonged in your company. Maya's voice remained calm, but carried new resonance. So let me formally introduce myself. She reached into her clutch and withdrew not her phone, but a slim leather portfolio. From it, she extracted several documents, holding them up for the crowd to see. My name is Maya Chen. I'm the founder and CEO of Chen Healthcare Solutions. 3 years ago, my company consisted of me, a laptop, and a studio apartment in Lincoln Park. Today, we employ 47 people and have generated over $60 million in healthcare cost savings while expanding access to care in underserved communities. She set the first document on the table, her company's annual report, thick with data and testimonials. 6 months ago, the Meridian Foundation selected my company from over 200 applicants to lead their largest community health initiative in history. $50 million over 3 years to transform healthcare delivery in Chicago's South and West Side neighborhoods. The second document joined the first, the signed partnership agreement that had made national healthcare news. 2 weeks ago, Northwestern Memorial, Rush University Medical Center, and University of Chicago Medical Center signed consulting contracts with my firm worth a combined $18 million. More documents appeared on the table, each representing months of work, strategic planning, and professional achievement that Derek had dismissed in seconds. Derek questioned whether I understood how these events work. Let me explain how they work for someone like me. Maya's tone sharpened slightly. I've attended 47 medical conferences, 32 healthcare galas, and 19 pharmaceutical industry events in the past 2 years. I've been the only person of color in the room at 23 of those events. I've been questioned about my credentials at 16. I've been asked if I was someone's assistant at 11. I've been directed to service entrances at 4. The ballroom was absolutely silent now, the weight of accumulated microaggressions and systemic barriers hanging heavy in the air. But Derek made one crucial miscalculation tonight, Maya continued, her voice gaining strength. He assumed that because I looked young, because I'm a woman of color, because I didn't announce my credentials the moment I walked in, that I was somehow less deserving of basic respect. She turned to face Derek directly, who stood frozen between his boss and security personnel. Derek, you asked if I knew who you were talking to. Here's what I know. I'm talking to someone who represents a system that assumes incompetence based on appearance, someone who mistakes quiet confidence for uncertainty, professional composure for confusion, and earned authority for pretension. Maya's phone buzzed again. Her assistant's message was urgent. Bloomberg wants an exclusive. Harvard Business Review asking for a case study. Your story is everywhere. But Maya wasn't finished. I'm also talking to someone who works for a hotel chain that pays my company $200,000 annually to help them improve diversity and inclusion in their customer service practices. Her smile was sharp as surgical steel. Derek, you've just provided us with the perfect case study of exactly why that consulting contract exists. Morrison's face went from embarrassed to horrified as the full implications settled. Not only had his employee created a public relations nightmare, but he'd done it while the hotel was paying Maya's firm to prevent exactly this type of incident. Ms. Chen, Morrison stammered, I want to assure you that this level of discrimination is absolutely not tolerated by Meridian Hotels. Derek will face immediate termination, and will implement additional training protocols. Maya held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Mr. Morrison, Derek's termination solves Derek's problem. It doesn't solve the systemic problem that made Derek think his behavior was acceptable. Her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to boardroom negotiations and strategic planning. The question isn't what you'll do about Derek. The question is what you'll do about the culture that created Derek. The ballroom waited breathlessly for her next words, knowing they were about to witness either gracious forgiveness or strategic accountability from one of Chicago's most powerful healthcare executives. Maya looked around the room one final time, her gaze taking in faces that would remember this moment for years to come. "The choice," she said quietly, "is yours." Morrison stepped forward, his face grave with the recognition that his response would define not just his career, but his hotel's reputation for years to come. The live streams broadcasting this moment had viewers in six figures and climbing. "Ms. Chen, you're absolutely right. This isn't about one employee's poor judgment. It's about systemic failures in our training, our culture, and our accountability measures." His voice carried the weight of genuine understanding. "I'm prepared to implement immediate and comprehensive changes." Maya nodded slowly, her expression suggesting she was evaluating his sincerity. "What specific changes, Mr. Morrison?" "First, Derek's termination is immediate and non-negotiable. Second, every member of our events and hospitality staff will undergo mandatory bias training within 30 days. Third—" Morrison paused, clearly making calculations about cost versus consequence. "Third, we're implementing a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior, with immediate termination for any employee who treats guests differently based on appearance, age, race, or perceived status." Dr. Harrison stepped forward. "Mr. Morrison, with respect, policies are only as strong as their implementation. How will you ensure these changes are meaningful rather than performative?" Maya smiled slightly at the question. It was exactly what she would have asked. Morrison looked directly at Maya. "Ms. Chen, I'd like to expand our consulting contract with your firm. Not just diversity training, but a comprehensive audit of our customer service protocols across all properties. I want you to help us identify and eliminate the systemic biases that made tonight possible." "That's a significant commitment," Maya replied. "A full audit and protocol revision would involve mystery shopping, staff interviews, policy rewrites, and ongoing monitoring. We're talking about a multi-year engagement." "Name your price," Morrison said simply. "Tonight's incident is going to cost us far more in reputation damage than any consulting fee ever could." Maya looked at Derek, who stood pale and silent, his career and professional identity crumbling in real time. For a moment, something approaching sympathy flickered in her eyes. "Derek," she said quietly, "you're going to be terminated tonight, and honestly, that's probably appropriate. But I want you to understand something. This doesn't have to be the end of your story." Derek looked up, surprise replacing despair on his face. "You've been given an opportunity that most people never get, the chance to confront your biases publicly and completely. You can spend the rest of your life bitter about consequences, or you can spend it learning from them." Maya reached into her clutch and withdrew a business card. "If you're genuinely committed to understanding what happened here tonight and why it was wrong, call my office next week. We provide bias training for hospitality workers, and we can recommend counselors who specialize in helping people recognize and overcome unconscious prejudices." Derek stared at the card as if it were a lifeline thrown into drowning waters. "I don't feel form. I don't find I'm not offering you absolution," Maya continued firmly. "I'm offering you education. Whether you take advantage of it is entirely up to you." Morrison watched this exchange with visible amazement. Even in the midst of public humiliation, Maya Chen was offering constructive pathways forward rather than simply demanding punishment. "Ms. Chen," Morrison said, "your grace under pressure is extraordinary. I can see why the Meridian Foundation chose your firm as their strategic partner." Maya's smile was genuine now. "Mr. Morrison, grace isn't about accepting poor treatment quietly. It's about responding to injustice in ways that create positive change, rather than just satisfying anger. She turned to address the broader crowd, many of whom were still recording. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope tonight's events serve as a reminder that excellence comes in many forms, from many backgrounds, and often from unexpected sources. When we make assumptions about people's capabilities based on their appearance, we don't just harm individuals, we deprive ourselves and our organizations of talent, innovation, and perspectives we desperately need. The ballroom erupted in sustained applause, led by Dr. Harrison, and quickly joined by every person present. Maya had transformed a moment of humiliation into a master class on leadership, accountability, and grace. 3 months later, the Meridian Soup incident had become a case study taught in business schools across the country. Harvard Business Review featured Maya's response strategy in their Leadership Quarterly. The video clips had been viewed over 50 million times, spawning countless discussions about workplace bias, professional grace, and systemic discrimination. Derek had, surprisingly, taken Maya up on her offer. He completed bias training, attended counseling sessions, and began working at a community center in Chicago's South Side, serving meals to families experiencing homelessness. His public apology video, posted 6 weeks after the gala, had garnered 3 million views and thousands of comments from people sharing their own stories of bias and redemption. The Meridian Hotel Group implemented the most comprehensive diversity and inclusion overhaul in hospitality industry history, with Chen Healthcare Solutions leading the transformation. Their new protocols became the gold standard, adopted by hotel chains nationwide. Maya's keynote speech that night, delivered after the confrontation, had focused on turning moments of crisis into catalysts for change. The speech became one of the most watched business presentations on YouTube, with over 20 million views. 6 months after the gala, Maya received a letter from a 15-year-old girl in Detroit. "I saw your video and realized that success doesn't have to look the way TV shows me it should look. I'm applying to pre-med programs because you showed me that people who look like me belong in every room." That letter now hangs framed in Maya's office, next to her company's latest award for healthcare innovation. The Meridian Foundation's partnership with Chen Healthcare Solutions had expanded. Access to quality healthcare for over 200,000 Chicago residents. Maya's firm had grown to 85 employees and opened offices in Detroit, Atlanta, and Los Angeles. Sometimes dignity isn't just about standing your ground. It's about changing the ground everyone else stands on. If this story of turning humiliation into transformation inspired you, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of people who refused to accept injustice and instead used it as fuel for positive change. Hit the notification bell to never miss stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things when faced with discrimination and bias. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that success comes in many forms, and that grace under pressure can be the most powerful form of leadership. What would you have done in Maya's situation? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video if it made you think differently about how we treat each other in professional spaces.